Let's start with the Bills at the Chiefs, 4:25 on Sunday. Obviously, what the NFL, look, the NFL put this schedule together, and they said on this week, in week 14, the fans are going to get to see Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles, Cowboys in back-to-back windows. Now, the Bills, Chiefs, I think it's still going to be a great game. Maybe it's lost a little luster because Buffalo's record is not great, but it still means a lot. And the Chiefs are 8-4, coming off some, an uneasy month or so in Kansas City where they're not looking like the Chiefs over the last few weeks overall. And then the Bills, who are defying the odds as a really productive team that cannot win games. Kansas City's favored by 1.5 here.
Yeah, I think it's still a really good game. It's just different to what people thought it would be.
The stakes are different.
Yeah,
I think.
This pre-season, this would have looked like a game that had the potential to be an AFC championship preview or number 1 versus number 2 in the AFC, all those kinds of things. Instead, it's like Buffalo kind of needs this game to stay alive, and Kansas City has been wobbling and not looking like themselves and are actually quite vulnerable in a game like this against a team such as Buffalo, who, despite losing a lot of games, continue to look, good enough to beat anybody and well capable of winning this type of game. So neither team is necessarily where we thought they would be, but they're both still AFC contenders and compelling matchup and all those kinds of things.
You could argue that it means just as much, but the stakes are different in this game, but it is just as important because it's really, instead of a battle for the number 1 seed, it's a sky is falling game for both teams. Because if Buffalo loses, they fall to 6-7. They're already the number 11 seed in the AFC. Several teams ahead of them sitting at 7-5. Teams that you still, you wouldn't want to play the Bills in the playoffs compared to some of the other teams ahead of them.
Yeah.
But if they fall to 6-7, they might be done for the year. And then with Kansas City, if they fall to 7-5, Kansas City Chiefs, they're going from battling for the number 1 seed to sitting there with, they'd be 8-5.
Yeah.
But if they're 8-5, they'd be sitting there with potentially Pittsburgh and Cleveland and the Colts and the Texans as far as record goes.
Yeah.
So it is a massive game, but the stakes are different because we thought this would be a battle for, number 1 seed and home field advantage, but it's a little different this time around.
Yeah, I don't even know that if the Chiefs make the playoffs, it's pretty much the same. It doesn't really matter. Like number 1 seeding and the bye week and the home field advantage, that's all great, but nobody doubts the fact that Kansas City, if they're in, has the capacity to go on the kind of run and make the Super Bowl and do whatever. The problem would be more the performance. If we have another game where Kansas City's offense doesn't look like itself, and by itself, last year or previous years, like if it has another game where it doesn't look right, and, Mahomes, we said this on the show yesterday, right? Mahomes is held up as the gold standard of quarterback in today's NFL. That's the guy everyone wants. Everyone wants the next Mahomes, the best QB in the NFL. He isn't this year. He's grading like 10th or 11th or something. Like he's 10 grading points off where he can be and where he's been in the past and where the best quarterback in the NFL is. Mahomes and the Chiefs offense and the receivers, none of it looks like what we expect from this group. So if they have another game where that misfires, it's that's the problem, not the loss. Like if they lose a game 8-5, sure, that dumps them down with a bunch of other teams. But as long as they make the playoffs, I don't think that really matters. It's more if they don't find an offense at some point, that's the issue.
Yeah, as far as Kansas City goes, I am of the mind that most of the time, obviously only 1 team wins every year, breaking news. And with every other team, you usually look back and you say, hey, here are these weaknesses that popped up during the regular season that were the reason we lost in the postseason. I wouldn't be surprised either way, right? When the Chiefs get into the playoffs, if they make a run, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised. They've been there before. They've done that. But if they lose a game scoring 17 points, you're going to say, oh, of course. Yeah. We saw that all regular season. So that's what, to me, the margin for error for the Chiefs is just much smaller than it's been in previous years. And now their defense hasn't played as well in the last few weeks.
Well, what's really different, I think, is so previously it didn't matter for the Chiefs if they had a bad game or if things got away from them or if they were down, multiple scores. None of that mattered because you knew that this offense in an instant could click, put up 3 touchdowns, erase a 21-point lead, and keep on trucking, right? But now the way that they are underachieving, that's not happening. So actually, they're way more vulnerable to things going wrong this year because they don't have that explosive ability to just click and erase all the negative that's already happened. Like, the Chiefs at their best the last few years always reminded me of those 98 Vikings, where it didn't matter what the score was because you knew that it would only take 2 minutes for this offense to connect, Randy Moss, big play, boom, 7, boom, Robert Smith, there's 14 points, done. We've immediately swung the game back in our direction. That was what the Chiefs were like, right? You put them in a 21-point hole in the first quarter, who cares? It just means we're going to go pass crazy and do what we want to do anyway. But now they're not doing that. They're not able to score at will. They don't have the receivers to make that happen. Even if they did, defenses might be pivoting to take that away as a general concept. So things that go wrong for this offense are a much bigger problem, and any weaknesses they have are a bigger deal because they're not able to just offset them by, a Mahomes to Tyreek Hill connection that scores in a heartbeat.
So we know some of the history here. This is sometimes you get these weird runs from a scheduling standpoint. This is the 5th straight matchup they've had in Kansas City, 2 of which were from the playoffs, but the 3rd straight regular season matchup in Kansas City. They haven't played in Buffalo, I think, since 2020. The Bills have won the last 2 regular season games, 21 and 22. Both games in October, earlier in the year, where it was kind of like a early season statement game for the Bills. In 2021, though, that's the season where they had the epic overtime game, the 13-second game. Kansas City won 42-36, I believe it was. And Kansas City also won in the 2020 AFC Championship. So KC's gotten them in the last 2 playoff games, but the Bills have gotten them in the last 2 regular season games. You also have some injuries on the Chiefs side. Isaiah Pacheco didn't practice yesterday. Donovan Smith at left tackle, unlikely to play, I believe. Wanye Morris, rookie out of Oklahoma, likely to play left tackle. You put a non-model rookie out there, Sam, for Mahomes. Not just a non-model guy, like a don't look at him guy. Don't even look at him.
An avert your eyes guy.
Take him off the board. I'm just saying, might be some matchups to exploit here for the Bills. So the Bills have played, at least in the regular season, they've played pretty well against the Chiefs. It feels like one of those games where Buffalo could use Matt Milano. He's always been like the quarterback of that defense. They need Von Miller to step up. They need somebody to step up from a pass rushing standpoint in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, they also obviously need to stop shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, one of the differences I think between Buffalo and Kansas City this year is that Buffalo does still have the capacity to score at will, put up points, be explosive, have big plays. They've demonstrated that ability in a way that the Chiefs haven't really. But they keep shooting themselves in the foot with turnovers and just not even the volume necessarily. Like the Vikings have the volume thing with turnovers. The Bills, it's not as bad as that. It's just the timing has been atrocious.
Last time we saw the Bills, they're coming off a bye. 2 weeks ago, they lost to the Eagles 37-34, but they were, like other teams have done against the Eagles, in control of that game until they blew it in the second half. We've got 2 games with Joe Brady calling plays for Buffalo. Both games involved more Josh Allen running, more Josh Allen taking over, and that Allen in that Eagles game, it was like the superhuman Allen, other than the one time he misread coverage and threw the ball to James Bradbury, but he was running the ball like crazy, making big plays, and throwing the ball all over the yard. I'm expecting them to try to do the same.
I don't know if that's sort of a new play caller thing, Joe Brady versus Ken Dorsey, or if it's simply we have reached the point now where there is no margin for error, so we can't shelve you the way that we may have been trying to do earlier in the season. This concept of, we really need to take stuff off Josh Allen's plate so that he can be healthier and so that he doesn't get hurt as often and blah, blah, blah. Now it's like, dude, we need you. We would have loved to take things off your plate. Having said that, we're 500 in staring, playoff elimination in the eyes. We actually need you to go out there and make plays. So I'm sorry, it's all on you again.
One more thing with the Chiefs. This is the 3rd straight game. I don't know if this matters, but I believe it's the 3rd straight game the team that they're playing has extra rest. So they played the Packers last week were coming off of a Thanksgiving game. I think the Raiders were coming off a bye, but the Bills are coming off of a bye, playing them here. I don't know how much that actually matters, but there's still this element of the Chiefs as defending champs getting the best from their opponents, right? They got a good, the Raiders offense played well a couple weeks ago relative to what they could do. They got the best from the Packers. So it's the schedule doesn't look daunting for Kansas City, but they get every team's best, and this is probably their most difficult game for the rest of the year. If you're Kansas City, there's two ways this can go. You're either 8-5 coming out of this, or you get past this game and you say, okay, we've got Patriots, Raiders, Bengals, Chargers to finish the season. The path to the number 1 seed is actually smooth sailing. So huge game, pivotal for a lot of different reasons, just not what we expected.
Yeah, one other sort of critical injury issue or relevant player for this game, Drew Tranquill left the Packers game with a concussion. Generally, guys that have been concussed in one game miss at least a week and don't play the next week. If he misses, they're in the same situation as they were in that game, right down to the third string middle linebacker.
Nick Bolton might be back this week, though, coming off of IR.
That would be huge.
Nick Bolton might be back
this week.
I know some Chiefs fans who don't like Nick Bolton. PFF grading likes Nick Bolton. He's been a very good run defender over the last couple of years, so I think that would be a big return for Kansas City.
It would be huge because otherwise they're back to that situation of relying on Jack Cochran, and against a team like Buffalo where they could target the middle of the field with tight ends or even wide receivers, and B, you've got to concern yourself with not just the play call but the threat of Josh Allen at any given moment to either take off or be part of that design run game. So I would say this is a more important game than most to have a middle linebacker on top of his game.
Don't let the records fool you. 6-6 Bills versus the 8-4 Chiefs. Still a great game. Chiefs favored by 1.5. Just 1.5 at home. Where are you going with this one?
Right. I mean, that shows you exactly what you're saying, right? Like, forget the records. Vegas sees this as a very close game, a coin flip, if not the Bills are a better team because they're only slight underdogs on the road. I'm going to bank on, I guess, the Bills. I think they'll win this because they need it.
Yeah, I'm going to take Buffalo again. I don't love this. I take Kansas City almost every single week, no matter what the spread is. But Buffalo's done a nice job during the regular season the last couple of weeks. I'm going to lean on that trend, and I think, again, the Bills are better than their 6-6 record, and the Chiefs have shown some weaknesses this year. So I like Buffalo as well.